You know, we all have a lot of data, and it has to positively, absolutely stay safe. It can't get into the wrong hands, and the biggest challenge we have is how to transfer it from here to there. We all know as leaders that legacy tools that transfer our important files and sensitive data are mostly outdated and fall short on security, especially with the demands of today's remote workforce. Relying on outdated technology puts our organization's brand at risk, and that is unacceptable. So we're excited to invite you to step into the future of completely secured managed file transfer from our friends at Kiteworks. Kiteworks is absolutely, positively the most secure managed file platform on the market today. They've been FedRAMP Moderate authorized by the Department of Defense since 2017. And unlike traditional legacy systems with limited functionality, Kiteworks has unmatched software security with ongoing bounty programs and regular pen testing to minimize vulnerabilities. And the coolest part, they have easy-to-use one-click appliance updates you will love. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. And now, the show. Hey everyone, in this episode you're not going to want to miss. We're going to talk about how the FBI fights cybercrime, what they do to help you prepare, what they do after a data breach, how they actually engage with victims, and how they go after cyber criminals themselves. If you've got a few minutes, sit back. We've got some questions from listeners and viewers. Please know we read them all, and they all matter. So keep them coming. Let's check this out.
Thanks for taking my call. Quick question. I heard that after a data breach, sometimes PR firms often get involved to help their reputation. What's their role? How does that work?
I have a question. What is the FBI's role when a data breach happens?
Is there anything I can do individually to protect myself and my family?
Great question. So if you ever wondered what really happens in a cybercrime manhunt or a cybercrime takedown, like what really happens to the public, to children, to the elderly, and businesses of all sizes. So today we have the rare chance to sit down with former special agent with the FBI's Cybercrime Division, Scott Augenbaum. He shares practical ways how to protect yourself online, and he's developed this model based on all of his decades of experience called the 4 Truths. It's an insightful framework. You're going to get a lot out of this video. So come join us. This is the story of former FBI Special Agent Scott Augenbaum and the 4 Truths of Cybercrime. Come join us as we dive deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today, interviewing top technology leaders from around the world and sharing true cybercrime stories to raise awareness. From the creators of Vigilance, the newest global technology newsletter, translating cyber news into business language we all understand. So please help us keep this going by subscribing for free to our YouTube channel and downloading our podcast episodes on Apple and Spotify so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. And we're back.
Right.
So welcome, everybody, to Cybercrime Junkies podcast. In today's episode, we're going to have how to protect yourself online, the 4 truths about cybersecurity from an FBI perspective with special guest Scott Augenbaum. Scott, welcome to the studio. Thank you, sir.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me here. You guys are doing unbelievable work in educating people, and it's such a privilege to be here with you today.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Scott, explain to the listeners your background. From our understanding, you're a retired FBI special agent of the Cyber Division, which was formed, back in 2002 in Washington, D.C.?
Tell us about that.
Tell us a little bit about your background, right, so that the listeners understand.
Well, first of all, I don't think my listeners can see me, but you see the big smile on my face, right?
We do.
That's because I'm retired from the FBI. And I retired in 2018. I had an amazing 30-year career with the FBI. Started at age 20 as a file clerk, became an FBI agent in 1995. Dabbled in cyber in 1998 when the National Infrastructure Protection Center was formed as the lead government agency for critical infrastructure protection in 1998. I got involved. That was my core competency. Cybercrime, I went to headquarters in 2003 as a supervisory special agent in the FBI Cyber Division, worked on the first national cyber strategy, became a supervisor of our cyber task force in Nashville, Tennessee from 2007 to 2013. Spent the last 4 years handling all outreach because I discovered a really important message that it was my job to get out to the community. Retired in 2018, started a brand new journey. And as I like to joke, 30 years, never had a real job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not a lot of responsibility, right?
No responsibility at all.
But I want to take you guys back in time a little bit. I want to take you back until 1995. Because I want to explain the difference between today's environment of the FBI and what it was like. So if you'd ask me, Scott, what'd you do for a living in 1995? I would say it was really easy.
Yeah, like a day in the life. What was a day in the life then?
Well, I'm going to give you a big encapsulating picture of what 5 years looked like. I can explain it in 3 sentences or a couple of words. Bad people did bad things to good people, and I worked with local cops and state cops, and we put bad guys in jail. Right. What a fun and exciting job for this 27-year-old kid from Brooklyn, New York, a gun, a badge, a bulletproof vest, played cops and robbers with my friends. Because in 1995, crime was a localized problem, and the FBI has 56 field offices, about 485 smaller offices, and that's it. Crime was a localized problem. And we were working bank robberies, fugitives, drug dealers, and all that stuff, extortion. I mean, my life was the middle of a video game and a mystery novel, from bouncing from one thing to another.
That's a great description.
To explain. And even cybercrime was in its infancy when I started. And now, as you know, it's a completely different world that we live in today.
Yeah, it really started almost as wire fraud, things like that, right? And then we talk about it all the time, how when people get online, they're in a small town in rural Kansas, and they get online, you are not entering rural Kansas. There are no borders. When you get online, you enter their world.
Yep.
And it's interesting. You know, I've read a lot of your work, Scott. You mentioned back in like August 2016. And for the listeners, Scott has these 4 truths, so we're going to get into them and some of the true cybercrime stories that Scott was involved in. But first, I want to touch on this a little bit. You talk about in August 2016, the shadow brokers.
Yeah.
They stole the NSA tools that were used at the time to protect the United States. Can you share with the audience? What you learned about that? Because Mark and I talk about the shadow brokers quite a bit. When they took down the telecom group of Spain, they issued that. They issued that edict online that we have no borders or country. Sure. When you get online, you enter our world. We are. Yeah,
let's lead up to that, because that was something that we were talking about when I was a young FBI agent in '98. We were talking about there are no boundaries in cyberspace.
Right.
There are none. And this was something that, when people say the government's not doing enough, I'm like, let's just go back in time. So if we go back in time about 2015 or so, when the shadow brokers are really starting to kick up their activity, what do we see? And this is according to Cybersecurity Ventures that's kind of, quantified it. The global cost of cybercrime was a $3 trillion problem in 2015. Mm-hmm. And then it was predicted by 2021 that this number would go up to $6 trillion. And I remember going out and doing these educational briefings and saying, hey, look, it's 2015. Because I thought 2015 was a game-changing year. Mm-hmm. And it's a little before the shadow brokers, but what are we coming off here? We're coming off Home Depot.
Yep.
We're coming off Target. We're coming off JP Morgan. We're coming off the NASDAQ. We're coming off the Mandiant report and the Chinese government getting into systems that I say OPM. The list goes on. And I really believe that 2015 was going to be the game-changing year, that everyone was going to wake up. The shadow brokers, say, hey, here, world, here's the tools. And by 2021, I'm going to say that this $6 trillion number, the number was underinflated because we had COVID-19 came into our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's think of the landscape here. And now, according to the same report, the cybercrime problem is going to go up to 2025. It's going to go up to a $10 trillion problem. So I want to see if you guys are tracking with me.
Yeah, no,
we can get worse or better.
Yeah, we are, because in the awareness trainings that we run for organizations as a public service, we always talk about, people don't realize how big it is. They don't realize how organized it is, how well funded it is, and how, when you add up the 5 main tech giants out there, Amazon, Google, Facebook, add up all their revenues, right? It's like 1.4 trillion. This has eclipsed that years ago, right? And it's higher than the international drug trade.
Oh, no, it's out of control. And let's just get the record straight for everybody. It's going to go up. It's going to get worse. Mm-hmm. Okay. So listen, we lay the stages, and, when people, so let's go through the 4 truths of cybersecurity. And let me explain how I learned it and how I earned it. Yeah. It was the fact that during my, people use the term FUD, right? I'm sure people probably go, hey, you guys are throwing out a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And
I always counter that. I always say, no. Like, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt exists. We're trying to protect you. We're merely explaining to you what's reality. Because
I think FUD has its place in this world. And I've renamed it. I call it FFRE, fear from real experience, because I've touched 1,000 cybercrime victims easily during my career. And, when you come out and you go, that's a pretty big number. I'm like, look, 20 years, that's 50 a year. That's 1 a week. I remember talking to 7 in a day. So to me, 1,000 is just an easy number. So, and these are people I looked face to face with. This isn't a situation where we're talking with a large healthcare company in the billions of dollars, which I've seen victimized, or Fortune 500 companies. I've seen that. These are small businesses. Right. These are romance scam victims. These are the elderly. These are nonprofit organizations. And what do they all have in common? Which is my first truth about cybersecurity. And I want to ask you guys to help me unpack these, because we can go into hours on each one. But the first one is, none of my victims ever expected to be a victim. They were all caught off guard, and they went like this. I can't believe I was targeted. Why would anyone want to target me? Yep. Have you guys experienced that maybe in your world?
It's exactly what we hear. And what they don't understand is even small organizations, nonprofits, the elderly, they have so much data, and oftentimes even we're the product that is being sold, right? Our identities, it gets to, even at the individual level, there's so much value for cyber criminals.
I've even come up, because a lot of people say, well, you're kind of blaming the victim. I mean, I've been accused of that. But I've come up with a talk track. I could write a whole book on the top 30 reasons people don't take cybersecurity seriously. And let's kind of unpack that a little bit. Nashville, Silicon Valley of healthcare, 500 healthcare organizations now. And as I was learning and earning, I'm going out and I'm speaking at conferences, And I would say, well, companies would come to me in the healthcare world and we would talk. And I would say, are you concerned about being a cyber criminal? And they'd go, no. And I would go, why not? They would go, well, we're a small business.
Right.
Let me ask both of you, what's your definition of a small business?
30 million in revenue and under.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Mark?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
You know, we all have a lot of data, and it has to positively, absolutely stay safe. It can't get into the wrong hands, and the biggest challenge we have is how to transfer it from here to there. We all know as leaders that legacy tools that transfer our important files and sensitive data are mostly outdated and fall short on security, especially with the demands of today's remote workforce. Relying on outdated technology puts our organization's brand at risk, and that is unacceptable. So we're excited to invite you to step into the future of completely secured managed file transfer from our friends at Kiteworks. Kiteworks is absolutely, positively the most secure managed file platform on the market today. They've been FedRAMP moderate authorized by the Department of Defense since 2017. And unlike traditional legacy systems with limited functionality, Kiteworks has unmatched software security with ongoing bounty programs and regular pen testing to minimize vulnerabilities. And the coolest part, they have easy to use one-click appliance updates you will love. Step into the future of secure managed file transfer with Kiteworks. Visit kiteworks.com to get started. That's kiteworks.com to get started today. And now, the show.
No, I would say similar revenue amounts. You could do it on account, maybe, but I think revenue is probably a good metric.
So I have a company, a $300 million company says, we're not concerned. We're a healthcare company. We're only $300 million.
Wow.
And then they point out, I act shocked. They go, what are you talking about? The largest healthcare company in Nashville is $54 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they put it in perspective. They are a small company.
Right. Within that industry, within that niche.
Yeah. Well, and then just think about all the companies. There are 18 million sole proprietors in this country. Those are people that I don't even think are making, a majority of them aren't even making $100,000 a year. And I'm here to say the cyber criminals do not care who you are. They don't care what industry you're in. I do plenty of employee trainings and I hear people go, well, I'm a new hire. I'm the janitor. I'm not in the C-suite. It doesn't matter how much money you make.
I'm a customer service rep at a company. I just came out of college. I don't like that's what I always hear, Scott, is, oh, that's the IT's problem. They have people that handle all of that.
I'm here to say that there's a complete disconnect because I'm going to talk about that once I start unpacking the truths. But let me tell you my journey. So part of my journey as an FBI agent after 2015 is to go out and identify the largest potential targets in town and have meetings with them. Just to be able to say, look, because by the time you call the FBI, it's too late. So let's sit here, let's share intelligence.
Too late then.
So I would talk to companies on the NASDAQ. They didn't want to talk to me. And when I did, they're like, hey, why don't you go talk to the companies on the New York Stock Exchange? Mm-hmm. And when I would talk to companies on the New York Stock Exchange, they would go, the best line was, we're only a $5.7 billion company. And according to this one data breach report, cyber criminals are really only targeting because your risk only goes up the more money you make. And I was like, guys, I wanted to say, where are you getting your information from? People Magazine, the cyber criminals do not care who you are.
Yeah, it's almost confirmation bias, right? Like they need investors to have confidence to invest in their organization, so they will find some data point and cite that and say, see, we're not a target, we're safe to invest in. When in reality, nobody is.
Now being retired and working for myself, I'm going to tell you they're 100% wrong.
Mm-hmm.
100% wrong. Yeah. So we kind of did that. That's the whole model here. The first truth about cybersecurity. Hey, my MSP is going to protect me. Hey, I got cyber liability insurance. Hey, I just bought Here's some of my
greatest firewall there is. It's fine.
Hey, I just got my PCI audit done, I just got my HIPAA audit done. And when I talk like this, my consultant friends want to jump out the window, which makes me bring it up even more because you know what? You know what the terms HIPAA and high trust have in common in the healthcare industry?
What?
Every one of my victims all passed their audits with flying colors. That's
interesting.
Awesome.
Hey, walk us through. You were involved when we're talking about the first truth. You were involved with a small nonprofit in a small town in Indiana, like Little Red Door. I thought it was.
No, that was something that I quoted in my book. I was not involved with that, but I would just see nonprofits targeted. I would see Nashville is the home of.
Yeah, it's an example of one. The Little Red Door was an example of a nonprofit in a small town in Central America. I
didn't want to name victims in my book at all, so I just found other cases I didn't work on that I found in the media. But let me just tell you, as we unpack a little bit more, I would sit here and I would talk to large religious institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had information that the cyber criminals wanted. They had donor information, bank accounts.
They have lots of technology. They have lots of technology. The more technology, the wider your footprint, right?
And one of the things that they told me one day was, I go, are you concerned? And they said, God is our firewall. And I said, that's really great practice. I really, I love to believe that too. But the cyber criminals do not care. They don't play by the rules. And I would see operating accounts stolen from religious institutions. And it would make me crazy with that. Because remember, here I am with the FBI trying to go out, balance the act. You can't make people do it. You can't really name it. So now we unpack truth number one. Nobody expects to be a victim. I don't fit the victim profile. That does not exist. Here's the second truth. I mean, once these cyber criminals get access to your information, steal your data, get your parents' money stolen, or impact you with ransomware, by the time you contact law enforcement, it's too late. We don't have a magic wand. We got some great information we can probably help you with, but we can now. There is no reset button. There is no magic wand. And when I'm out at a conference and I'm telling this to people, it's really an eye opener for them.
Yeah, I mean that's your second truth is like you're likely not going to get your money back, and it's really too late. I mean, think about so many people when I hear people. Because we consult with organizations all the time, and I hear people saying, well, I don't need these preventative measures. I've got insurance.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
That's too late.
Yeah.
Like your insurance is not going to protect your brand. It's not going to keep you from having to shut your doors. Right?
Absolutely.
It's not gonna.
And as we're on the second truth, let's just unpack another thing. When it comes down to it, because ransomware is really a great issue. So I'm going to put both of you guys on the spot and interview both of you guys over here.
Let's do it.
We're going to go through the question I get all the time. Ransomware. Do we pay the ransom or do we not pay the ransom? I want both of your answers.
Okay. Mark, go first.
I would say most individuals typically pay.
Yeah,
probably
that's what most individuals
to get your data back.
Okay, what do you guys
correct. In general, you're never supposed to pay because you're funding the criminal organization that could even have ties to terrorist groups.
Oh, right? Absolutely. But as the great poet,
if you don't, you could have to shut your doors immediately.
Well, you know what? When I was a young FBI agent, 48 years old, 2 years left on the job, I'm telling people in a really straight face, you don't pay the ransom. Of course not, because I've had companies pay the ransom on a Monday, and then they didn't find out what the vulnerabilities are, and they got hit by another group on a Tuesday. Or they didn't get their stuff back. Or it went to fund some jihadist terrorist group, or bad people. So there was lots of reasons, but I would get like the greatest line in the world. So I would get a phone call, and I'll never forget this. It's a financial services firm. They tell me that they got hit with ransomware. And I go like this: as long as you have a good backup in place, you're going to be okay.
Well, that's outdated, first of all.
That was
it's outdated from a technical perspective, because the new evolution of ransomware we have to understand the reality is criminal adversaries, right? When people think of hackers, they think of all hackers are bad, and that's not true, right? There's white hat hackers. There's
cyber criminals, and then there's others.
Cyber criminals.
Right, exactly.
Right. When a cyber criminal gains access to an organization's network, the odds are you're never going to know about it for a while. Statistics vary, but it looks like it's close to 6 months that they're in, looking around, spying, getting things in place, putting in back doors. And the new evolution of ransomware actually will delete backups even before they launch the ransomware.
Or encrypt them, yes. Yeah.
Well, and here's what I was telling people back when Dark Overlord was playing in the field. If you have ransomware on your network, I want you to know that they already stole your information. And people would not want to hear this, because at the end of the day, and do we pay or do we not pay? I'm going to tell you, everybody pays. If you're thinking about that, you are having the wrong conversation with your organization. What are we doing to prevent this from happening? How are we stopping executables from running on our network? And I'm telling you point blank, the whole thing of backing up, nobody ever takes into account that backing up does nothing to prevent ransomware. Right. We've been focusing on the availability aspect for too long. I sit down with healthcare companies and I go, okay, if they can steal your information, can they alter your information? Yes.
Yes.
Healthcare company, what do you do if they change a simple letter from A to B in all your blood type records, and you get an email saying a message? We have to stop. We have to think differently about the whole entire ransomware.
Yep.
You guys agree or what?
No, that's exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah, and especially in light of the pandemic, Scott, remote workers. I mean, I talk to businesses all the time, and they're like, "Oh, well, we have a VPN. It's fine." And I'm like, "Oh my God, don't you understand how it works? Like, I have a VPN. Like, we have a VPN. We're at home. We're protected by our Comcast." Or our Xfinity,
the router behind the TV.
The router behind the TV, that's not enterprise grade.
Nobody's hacking these routers behind the TV, guys.
No, it's going to be a social engineering thing, and we're going to go right in through the VPN right to the company network.
Yeah.
Right, and so you've got to keep things out in the wild.
So let's make sure everybody here understands where we are so far. Bad guys impact you. It's still important to report these things. Business email compromise, completely out of control. And so business email compromise and ransomware. In 2015, as an FBI agent, I was going around to all the largest companies in my area of responsibility, explaining to them that the BEC was only a $3 billion problem, not a $43 billion problem. And there was a storm coming called ransomware in 2015. And I talk about that in my book, and again, nobody really was paying attention. So here we are, which now we got up to the third truth about cybersecurity, which is another painful truth.
It is. And that's the bad guys aren't going to get arrested.
And a majority of the situations, they're not getting arrested. I get a lot of pushback from people because the FBI and the Secret Service do an amazing job. We have 72 legal attaches all around the world. They still are putting bad guys in jail. So when your company when the hacker or the cyber criminal who gets into Uber is tracked down, what about how much money Uber spent, and what about how much other crime was committed? So even when you do arrest the bad guys, you're still not getting your stuff back.
Yep.
Okay. So before we go into the fourth truth, I want to go into it and get your opinion on this. So we know the cybercrime problem is going up, but we keep spending more and more money to be safe. So what does it mean if we keep spending more money to be safe and the problem keeps going up? Does it mean the attackers are getting more sophisticated?
I think
we haven't
they
identified
are. I think they are, but I think that we're identifying the wrong problem. A lot of business owners or organizational heads of nonprofits or government agencies that I speak to, they're focused on the wrong problem. They really focus their time and energy on infrastructure protection because it's being driven by vendors, right? You buy this service, you buy this tool, you buy this, you put it in the closet. Now this is doing this technologically to protect you. That's protecting you against the highly sophisticated, the bots, the highly sophisticated coding brute force attacks, right?
Right.
But that's few and far between. I mean, when we saw the rise in the number of breaches that were in the news, a lot of that was because of ransomware as a service, malware as a service, and how now you only need to be criminal to be involved in cybercrime, right? You can buy the malicious code that can do the things that you want. And so now it's organized, it's productized. And so what's happening is they're really like, my point is simple, Scott, and that is my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, is none of that investment, all that investment that's going on protecting the infrastructure, none of that's going to matter when our users let them in. What the focus needs to be
the
on
human factor.
The focus needs to be on
the human
behavioral analysis, behavioral change, changing the culture, making every single culture keep security top of mind. It needs to not be something that's up to the IT team or the security team. It has to be up to every single individual.
Completely agree with you, which leads me to the fourth truth. And what brings on the fourth truth? You know, when we are starting to deal with big enterprise breaches, okay, you just throw more money. I mean, corporate America is, you know, taking money and exchanging it for the transfer of risk. Okay.
Right.
That's what tools do. But you know what they don't do? They don't transfer responsibility. And that's where the problem goes. What is an organization made up of? An organization is made up of people.
People.
Spending money.
Exactly right.
The problem keeps getting worse. And I'm going to tell you, this is the fourth truth. The majority of the victimizations that I dealt with easily could have been prevented.
Yeah.
And when we go into that, and I talk to my friends in the world, because almost 90% of what I dealt with easily could have been prevented. And that's oversimplifying the problem. Okay? Don't call me to figure out how to get bots off your network or network segmentation or doing these things. But a majority of these things that we are dealing with today come down to nothing more than a stolen username and a stolen password. The account compromise, and this is according to my friends today who are doing intrusion response work for hire, almost 80% of their intrusion response work comes down to nothing more than account compromise. Not a sophisticated attack. The fact that there are billions of usernames and passwords on the dark web, and from the dark web, these bad guys are selling them to the West Africans who are figuring out very, very simple scripts to start spraying your stolen username and password from the Yahoo breach in 2015 against 100 of the top e-commerce sites, and they are just getting in time and time again. And the fact is, the majority of people do not put two-factor authentication, and everyone goes like this to me. I can't believe this happened to me. The cyber criminals just got access to because my whole Salesforce database was online, and they blame the CISO.
Right.
Instead of blaming the sales department.
Right. And it's absolutely true. You know, we talked about that in another episode actually directly, where we talked about MySpace. Remember the fall of MySpace? so many different people. It's not really the fall of MySpace. MySpace went up. It was once the biggest social media platform in the planet, and then and they were worried about Friendster, but then Facebook came up and YouTube and everything else, and so MySpace is still around. It's mostly for community and music promotion, etc. But that MySpace breach, so many people think, well, I don't use MySpace anymore, so who cares about my old username and password? Well, that breach has your username, password, your credentials online for sale, and has for years. And we walk through what happens, because there were several case studies where an organization was breached because of somebody's old MySpace credentials that were stolen and put for sale online.
Oh yeah, maybe Blockbuster Video. I bring that up, and people are like, "What's that?" So these are the things that we have to really kind of take into account. And what I talk about is not revolutionary; it's kind of common sense. But as I say all the time, common sense is not the same thing as common practice.
No.
Exactly.
Is it laziness? Is it laziness? Is it effort? Is it the fact that people don't
think it's kind
have
of
enough
more
time, or is it that they don't think that?
Every one of our parents has one of these. Okay, they don't realize that this device over here had a stolen username and password. It is not becoming, it's not required training. The cybersecurity awareness training today is not using real world examples. So this is what I tell everyone yesterday. I have this big conference. I'm like, if you don't understand two principles that I talk about, and one is the scope of the problem. If you don't realize the problem is getting worse and you cannot outspend your way out of the problem, and I never say don't spend, but you're not going to be able to go over and sit here and buy home antivirus and a identity theft protection that will not reduce your chances of being a cyber criminal that dramatically. It takes work. There's no magic pill for that. Then you go through the 4 truths, and then you just really sit here, and if you explain that, look, you're not getting your stuff back, nobody's going to jail, but it could have been prevented. And then you just start unpacking, like, look, 90% of the stuff I dealt with were these 5 or 6 principles. These are the principles. Go work on this. This is what I'm putting out every day on LinkedIn, just trying to make a point. You need repetition. You read my book, that'll keep you safe for about 3 days. I know I'm talking people out of buying a book, but at the same time, it's like we have to have repetition over and over again to remind people about this, because we have an older population that has access to technology, and the cyber criminals are slaughtering us.
Absolutely. So what are some of the top precautions? What are some of the top? Walk us through some of the top. You mentioned that. I mean, one of the top precautions we all know about is multi-factor authentication.
Okay, let's just kind of go through it, because you know what? Let's just kind of go through this, and this is why in the show notes, you can go to my website and get a copy of this very simple framework that I created, because I just want to show people you don't have to do anything to stay safe. You can just follow these things. So if you don't understand, remember, how is behavior change affected? Through storytelling. I just convinced you that you can't outspend your way out of the problem. Then I explained to you that your stuff is stolen, you're not getting it back, nobody's going to jail. However, 90% of it could have been prevented. So now let me explain to you what are the simple steps in the framework. And when people go, how is this going to prevent 90%? As an FBI agent, after listening to 1,000 victims, I discovered the patterns. Now, discovering patterns is really cool, but it's when you create your own patterns, that's when the magic really starts working. So first of all, the first thing is talking about that social engineering is the weapon of choice of the cyber criminals. Okay. And that upsets my network friends. That upsets the 3% who are the techies who go, it's not, it's the network base, it's all in the packet.
It's not, though. It's not.
Like, my mother doesn't know what a packet is, okay, unless it's in a sugar.
Right.
Okay, but my mother can realize that social engineering through either phishing, texting, or telephone calls, or through websites.
Yep.
Like romance scams and Facebook account compromises and LinkedIn and getting messages. That is the tool of the cyber criminal, and it's going to go through weapons that they're going to use. And it's not. And what is social engineering? Tricking us into do things that we don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And what do they want us to do? They want us to download a piece of malware, or they want to click on a link. And that's it. So I got to get people to understand, because if I explain it to them, oh, wow, by you clicking on that link from Amazon, their bad guy's going to steal all your money. And also, let me make reference to the fact you're not getting it back.
Right. And they're not going to jail.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so that's number one. That's part of getting people to do that. The other thing that we have to realize is, what are the cyber criminals trying to get us to do? They're phishing us to get information in malicious code in our networks. But now the cyber criminals, you don't even have to do phishing anymore. Why is that? Because there are so many usernames and passwords on the dark web, and there are so many people who don't secure their platforms with two-factor, and we'll talk about that now it's the account compromise. Because 66% of the population is using the same password for multiple platforms. So now I have to convince people, because remember, I'm always in a game. I got 40 minutes. I got 10 minutes. I got to explain to you why you need to do this. So my whole big point here is, if you were using the same password for multiple platforms, the cyber criminals are going to get access. So let me use the Yahoo example that I like to use. 3.5 billion Yahoo usernames and passwords stolen by, guess who? Russian organized crime. And what did Yahoo tell us all to do? You guys remember that?
Get credit monitoring. Change your password.
So let's just assume all 3.5 million users changed their passwords.
Which they didn't.
All right, let's just play the game. Come on, humor me. This is my make-believe time, guys. I'm on a podcast.
Right.
Change their username and password. Everybody's Yahoo account is safe. Out of those 3.5 billion Yahoo users, what percentage do you guys think have either an iPhone, an iPad, or a Mac computer, which means they have an iCloud account? What percentage? Take a guess. We don't need to know the right answer, but what do you think?
80%.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be lower, 50%.
All right, let's just say for my example, it's 10%. Can we agree that it's more than 10%?
Yeah, oh yeah.
All right, let's go lower. Yeah. Let's go lower. What is 5% of 3.5 billion besides a lot?
I don't know. Math is not my forte.
Right. I think it's 1.75. Out of that subset, there are 175 million Mac users, just for this example on the low end. And I guarantee you 99.9% say Macs don't get viruses. Well, nobody needs a virus on a Mac, because almost 60% of the users are using the same password. So what's 60% of 175 million? Let's even bring it down lower. Let's say it's 10%. That's 17.5 million people are going to get infected.
Wow.
Because 60% of the population. So I need to convince users that they can't use the same username and password for platforms. But if they don't know what platforms they need to protect, it's game over. So let's talk about this from a user point of view, not an organization. I'm going to have you guys tell me, because I'm going to go sip some coffee. What are the platforms that your users need to protect to keep themselves and their families safe from a financial loss?
Banking, employment, retirement, and social media. Social media.
Here's a big overlooked one, guys. Your AT&T and your Verizon account.
Oh, yeah.
Because they get into that, it's game over.
But once they're able to SIM swap, right? Your entire digital life.
Forget about SIM swapping. That takes skill. Just go into your AT&T account and reroute all your calls and all your text messages to another number.
Right.
Everyone's like, well, what about SIM swapping? I'm like, well, you don't have two-factor authentication. I mean, what you're protecting against the advanced threat, which is real, but let's protect the simple threat. So I need your users to go out here and identify mission critical accounts. Now that we've done this, I want you to tell me what accounts that you see in your life that companies have access to that are cloud-based accounts that are outside of the world of IT and outside of the world of information security.
Oh, hundreds. Like, I mean, there's every user at least has at least 10.
Let's think about some accounts that organizations are using that when I talk to CISOs, they kind of go, hey, do you know many CISOs that are working with sales departments to make sure a two-factor is turned on the Salesforce account? You want to have some fun in your organization? Go see your guys are doing that. What about your HR platform? What are you doing to make sure that your HR administrators who are probably working from home, have antivirus on their home computer? And remember, where is our data within our organization? Organizations are doing a great job of protecting the perimeter, but now the perimeter's moved. We have banking, we have payroll, we have all of these different accounts. And think about how many different accounts are we using to keep things in. That's all the cyber criminal needs to get access to. He doesn't need your main data store. He needs your Salesforce.
Right.
And or even your social media. Now this kind of causes a little bit of a frenzy because all of a sudden I always say, hey, I just looked at your risk assessment. Listen, you still got a ton of risk you didn't cover. And everyone goes, well, this isn't, my SOX 2 audit doesn't cover this. And I'm like, well, that's the difference between being compliant and being secure, guys. And I'm not saying anything revolutionary here, am I?
No, but that's exactly right.
Oh.
That's exactly right. We've been talking about the importance of the fundamentals for 10 years when we've been doing this. Like
I've been doing it for 20. That's why I'm so sarcastic, guys. Wait until you're doing it 20 years. Well, you'll see how sarcastic you'll be.
Yeah, it's so true. Like
I believe it.
Because we come in contact with people all the time that say, oh, we have I figured out a great password, right? I've really got a good one. I put it in online on like how secure is my password, right? And this would take millions of years for someone to get. And then what do? They go and they use it on more than one app.
Or they save it in clear text, or they save it on their browser. So let's just so what do we know? Social engineering is the number one tool. The account compromise is the number one cybercrime. Okay. Mm-hmm. We need to identify our mission critical accounts. We need to do those at work, identify our cloud-based platforms. We need to set up secure passwords with all of our different accounts. Sure. However, if you don't use two-factor authentication, it's game over. Right. Because here's what I want you to understand. No matter what, I'm going to get an email from somebody I know and somebody I trust, and I am going to click on a link. I am a human. I can't help it. Maybe artificial intelligence is going to save me one day. I don't know, but I'm going to need a blanket around it. I'm going to click on the link, and as long as I have that two-factor authentication, I have some hope here. Now, the haters are going to go, well, SMS text messaging does not work. And I'm going to go,
oh, there's still authentication methods of MFA, right? Through Google, they have a good one.
Yeah, if I can't get people to do it, if I can't get people to do SMS, they're not going to be able to move up. And the cyber criminals don't have to worry because what's the percentage of users, according to Google, that are using two-factor authentication today?
Oh,
very low.
I'd say over 50%.
And now
over 50.
I don't think it's that high. I do not think it is that high. And I mean, maybe you can Google that while we're talking. I think it's going to be maybe 15 or 20% on its best day. And these same people who are using the Google Chrome browser that are storing all of their passwords in the browser, cybercriminal gets access to the Google Chrome browser.
Right.
Just getting your Gmail account. Now he sees all your stored passwords.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And okay, guys, we've done all of these things. Are we out of the woods? No. Business email compromise. Because now your third parties aren't going to do this.
Right. So, like, explain to the listeners that maybe aren't in the industry what business email compromise is.
Okay, business email compromise is very easy
that would be
to
good.
explain. If you are not using two-factor if on your email, or your vendors are not, you are going to get an email from somebody you know and somebody you trust. So let's say you have two-factor authentication on your email. Let's say you work for a large Fortune 500 company. You have policies in place. You have the best email filtering tools in place. You got firewalls. You got XDR, MDR, EDR, things I don't even know what they do. So you are a secure fortress. However, the cyber criminals get access to one of your vendors because he's not using two-factor authentication, or she. They see that you have a financial relationship with your vendor, with this person. And now all of a sudden, your accounts payable person gets an email from your vendor and says there's no malware in the thing, and all it says is this one thing: "Hey Barbara, I just want to let you know, we just changed bank account information. Here is the new bank account information. Please enter this into the system." And unfortunately, in so many organizations, large and small, what do you do when you get an email from a trusted third party asking you to do something? They're not asking you to send money.
No.
Right.
All they're asking you to do is enter into the system. And I've seen this happen before, and I've seen a company get taken for $6.8 million. Still happening every single day. And this is a financial person. Now, I've gotten brought into these because I've dealt with some pretty big ones. And I usually kind of get brought in and I ask the question, "Hey, what's your policy when somebody changes bank account and routing information on a bank account from a vendor?" And they always look at the CISO. You guys are security experts. Who owns the risk in this situation for changing for financial information? Is that the risk of information security, or is that the risk of finance? Who owns the risk?
My opinion, my opinion is it should fall on finance. That's
Really?
a policy. That's a leadership decision. They need to implement the policies with the advice and counsel of their CISO or their legal counsel. But every department owns their own security. Every individual does.
But if I can get you to understand that individual level, then maybe you have hope. So that's why I always go with the end user in mind, because at the end of the day, I didn't lose sleep when these companies lost $4.5 million. I hate to say it. It didn't matter to me, but it killed me when somebody was tricked out of sending $10,000.
Yeah.
It was a horrible day.
Yeah. Well, Mark and I had an incident. Well, we've seen business email compromise in real life, Scott, is we've seen where somebody in leadership is going to speak at a conference. Right. And what happens? They post about it on social media. The marketing team does, because they're proud of their leader. Right. And she's going to speak at this conference. And lo and behold, the day of the conference, right as they are about to go on stage, right around that time, internally, they get an email from the leader that says, "Hey, it's going well here. I'm just about to get on stage. I forgot to get this vendor paid," or something like that. Please get this done for me today. Because we're working on some deal or some socially acceptable reason. And they say, "I'll circle back with you tomorrow." And it looks like it's from the leader. It looks like it's legit. It'll be a vendor or an account that they're used to, that they deal with. The only thing that'll be different will be the routing instructions in the bottom. And if you don't have a policy in place to independently verify, then you're going to fall short for that. Mark and I were meeting with a CIO, and a woman walks past and says, "Oh, hey, we transferred that over to X vendor, just like you requested yesterday." And we kept talking, and we were there. And then right like a minute later, you saw the light go on above her head, and she goes, "Hang on a minute." And she bolted out. And she's like, what wire transfer? What are you talking about? She's like, well, I got this email. She's like, that wasn't from me.
And it happens all the time.
Yeah,
and
it happens all the time.
These are the things I write about. These are the things I talk about. Because I have one goal. I mean, when I was with the FBI, I felt like I couldn't do enough.
Yeah.
I just really couldn't do enough. I've seen bad things happen to good people. I felt very, very powerless. I felt like I couldn't help. When I was a young FBI agent, I felt like I could save the day. Then I realized, I had this epiphany that a majority of the things easily could have been prevented. And as a result of that, that's why I do what I do. And I live what I call my passion project life, which is trying to help people. And, if you go to my website, cybersecuremindset.com, here's the framework. It's everything that you've done. And what was the traditional advice? Scott, you're giving away everything for free. I'm like, look, I'm not telling anything that anyone hasn't already known. If I can keep people safe,
that's exactly right.
That's it. And that's how I make my living, because you know what? I give everything away to the do-it-yourself people. You do not need me. You can go to LinkedIn. You could go watch my videos. You could do all that. And then companies call me up and they go, can you do it for us?
That's like a full-time job, though, right?
What's that?
I mean, that's like a full-time job for someone to actually figure out what all the best practices are. What I loved about your book is you synthesized it. You just boiled it down in very practical terms, right?
Yeah.
Like
it's
you just follow these things and actually do what is being suggested. You reduce your risk, right? There's no silver bullet, but there is a reduction of risk.
And I don't claim to solve every problem, but I've taken the nuggets that I've learned. I've taken what it took me 25 years to learn. And I'll share with you, a lot of my friends laughed at the time. They go, what are you going to do? You're not technical, Scott. I mean, I've taken 7 SANS classes. I struggled with every single one of them. And I realized that that's not my strength. My strength is taking things, boiling it down, being very, very passionate. I love what I do. I've taken the nuggets of being an FBI agent. And that's why when people say, Scott, do you miss the FBI? I go, absolutely not. And everyone looks shocked. I had an amazing career. I would do it all over again. But what I've learned,
the same mission. You're still doing the same mission.
I'm doing it. But now I don't have to deal with the hang-ups. I can give my advice. I can tell people what I think. And I can just be very, very passionate about it. And that's why I love what I do.
That's fantastic.
And I would encourage all the listeners to connect with Scott on LinkedIn. Scott pushes out a lot of really good information on LinkedIn with a good cadence. That if you connect with Scott on LinkedIn, you'll definitely learn something just by following his message. And Scott, I really appreciate your passion for what you do. I'm glad that to see somebody out there trying to boil the ocean with a knife. And so,
no, and I love what
it rings close.
You guys are doing an awesome job. You got a great following. I can't wait to push this out to my tribe and everything, because just, little by little, we just have to build our own ecosystem. We have to sit there. And it takes people, to get, and I've been trying. I'm not giving up, because here's one of the things that I've learned. I got very frustrated because when I learned this information, I went out in front of an audience of 500 people. I boiled everything down into a simple checklist, which eventually became my book. And I said, come over, connect with me, and I'm going to give you everything you need to keep yourself and your family safe, just in a couple of points. And 5 people came to me out of 500 and asked me for my information. And I went, oh my God, I got so frustrated. I got angry and I was about to give up. But I said, I helped 5 people that day.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you save one business that has built a generational business and you keep their doors open because they just weren't looking at their blind spots, it's worth it. If you keep one family, one elderly family member that doesn't lose their life savings because of something that our message is resonating with, that makes it all worth it.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So, Scott, thank you so much. Links to Scott's book and his website and his LinkedIn will all be in the show notes. We thank everybody for listening. Scott, thank you very much, sir.
Hey, guys, you're doing a great job. Bob. Thank you for having me. We sucked all the oxygen out of the room, or at least I did.
That's great.
It was all
Absolutely
good stuff,
won't
Scott.
be-
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much. It absolutely won't
Thank
be
you.
our last conversation, so we'll talk again soon.
All right, guys.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, we'll see everybody. Bye. Well, that wraps this up. Thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you got value out of digging deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today. Please don't forget to help keep this going by subscribing free to our YouTube channel at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast, and download and enjoy all of our past episodes on Apple and Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for joining us. Well, things aren't getting any safer online, and we're excited to tell you about our exclusive offer for Aura, which is linked in the show notes below. Hey everyone, this is your host David Morrow, and we often get asked about individual safety and ways to protect loved ones or small business employees when they're online. So we turned to our friends at Cyber Threat Group, a full-service security consultancy located here in the US, and they told us all about Aura. You might have even seen actor Robert Downey Jr. in their television ads. Look, identity theft isn't cheap. The FTC reports that Americans lost $8.8 billion in identity theft and personal fraud this year, and can cost you personally hundreds of thousands of dollars. Aura provides it all. Financial and identity theft protection, a lightning-fast VPN for online privacy, antivirus, a password manager, and even parental controls for safe gaming and spam call protection. So protect your family or your employees when they get online. Give the gift of online safety. Check out the link in our show notes from our friends at Cyber Threat Group today. Aura is a great way to protect yourselves online. Check out Aura today and stay safe online.